Hello and welcome to EngLearn. Today we're going to analyze a great example of real-world speech writing. We're going to go through the speech that Zohran Mamdani, a recently elected New York City mayor, held as he won the New York City mayor elections on Tuesday. I believe that this speech, regardless of the politics, captured the attention of people worldwide, and there is very good reason for that. The way he speaks truly captivates people's minds, and I think it's really important to go over this example for you to see how a good speech writing is done. Let's start. We're going to go through not the entire speech, obviously, because it's lasts for the entire 23 minutes or something like that. If you want to, I'll leave a link down below. You can watch the entire speech. It is really worth watching. But we're going to do several excerpts, and we're going to start with the very beginning of the speech. As you know, the introduction and the conclusion in the speech are really important. He starts like this. Thank you, my friends. The sun may have set over our city this evening, but as Eugene Debs once said, I can see the dawn of a better day for humanity. So this happens as he comes out to a crowd of his supporters on this great night where he won the elections after a long campaign. Now, I want you to pay attention to how he addresses the audience for this first time. He starts with thanking them and he addresses them as his friends. So this entire sentence here is a marker of the way he is going to, of the tone that he's going to establish now, and that's going to continue throughout the speech. So he addresses his audience as friends. There are various ways to address your audience. There are very typical ways, like ladies and gentlemen, thanking the people, thanking his political supporters, thanking the people in his staff who led the campaign, and so on. And those are very formal ways to start a speech like this. But he does something very different. He subverts convention in this case, and he addresses his audience as his friends. Not supporters, not constituents, not voters, his friends. What this does is creates a sense of closeness and equality. So he positions himself as an equal to them. Now, he's positioning himself not above his audience as someone who is a detached politician, but as someone who is among them. This, combined with this expression of thanks that he has here, creates this warm and approachable tone that he is going to continue throughout the speech, and that has already marked his entire campaign. The fact that he thanks them also helps him establish his ethos or his credibility. But he's not establishing that credibility by positioning himself as some kind of an authoritative figure, but rather by establishing an ethos of humility and of serving, that he is a politician and an elected person who is going to be there to serve the people, and he's going to be accessible to the people. This greatly departs from the conventional formal political address, and it's actually quite informal. That could also be seen through his campaign with his videos that were very much geared towards the younger generations. And this informality establishes his authenticity, which is really important for the people who are voting for him, who are the people from the working class, for whom this authenticity really matters. He then moves on to evoke the words of Eugene Debs, who was a very prominent figure in the in the history of labor and fight for rights of the working class. And what this does is it anchors his victory and the struggle that they're going through to something greater. So this victory is not just something that happens to them. It's not his moment only, but it's something that has deep historical roots, which again gives him his ethos and his credibility. He also uses a great contrast here. The sun may have set, but he can see the dawn. So there is this light and dark imagery, which is very conventional, very well known. And he makes sure that he connects the dawn of a better day for humanity with this thing that they've achieved here, which again gives his victory a greater meaning and elevates it to something of greater significance, not just an election of a city mayor. He then moves on to say, for as long as we can remember, the working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Let's just stay here and then we'll move on. So he mentions two very different classes of people and he contrasts them. So he contrasts the working people, who are obviously the people who elected him, the majority of his voters, and the wealthy and the well-connected. You're going to notice the beautiful alliteration here, but that's not that important, but it does make the speech sound better. Lends a bit of poetic value to the speech, let's say. But he also does this in order to, he mentions these two groups of people to establish something that is a key contrast throughout his speech and his campaign. The working people are the people who are defined by their labor and their contribution to society, whereas the wealthy and the well-connected are defined by their privilege and by their status. So he clearly positions himself as a person who stands by the ordinary working people of New York. He, in this way, he frames the entire issue and the central message of his speech as a message of class struggle. So there is a greater, this is again not just about him, not just about these elections, but it elevates the message to a higher level. This is a moral fight between us and them. Them are the powerful elite, the wealthy and the well-connected, and we, and he includes himself there, are the working people of New York. So in this way, he shows that from the very outset that he is an ally with his audience. This is continued then later on as he shows the working people in what ways the power was not in their hands. So he says that the well-connected were told the working people that power does not belong in their hands. Fingers bruised from lifting boxes on the warehouse floor. Palms calloused from delivery by candle bars. Knuckles scarred with kitchen burns. These are not hands that have been allowed to hold power. And yet, over the last 12 months, you have dared to reach for something greater. So here we have this fantastic, long, complex sentence where he speaks about the working people. And he speaks about them in this metaphorical way where he uses abstract concepts like power and he grounds them in something very physical. So he shows hands and parts of hands, fingers and palms and knuckles, and he shows how injured those hands were. They were bruised, they were calloused, and they were scarred. All of these are great examples of very concrete, specific, descriptive verbs, adjectives that he uses here. So to do this has really several effects on the audience. First of all, this parallelism, fingers bruised, palms calloused, knuckles scarred, combined with the fact that it's a tricolon or a list of three, creates this overwhelming image of constant sacrifice. There are millions and millions of people like this who have been injured through their hard work and who have been forced to constantly sacrifice everything they had. So listening is not used just for rhythm or because it sounds good, but it serves a very concrete rhetorical purpose because the repetition of these visual and tactile images creates this scene of overwhelming sacrifice. The imagery of hands is actually a kind of metaphor. It's called a synecdoche. And this is when a part is used for the whole. So he uses this imagery to turn these physical injuries into kind of badges of honor and the signs that these people hold political legitimacy. Those people who literally build the city, in his opinion, and according to his beliefs, are the ones who deserve to hold power. And he says all of that in this beautiful long sentence. And then he says, and yet, despite the fact that you were not allowed to hold power in the past, Over the last 12 months, throughout his campaign, you have dared to reach for something greater. So there is again this. There is some kind of risk involved. Voting and campaigning is an act of courage. So the audience, when he tells them you have dared to reach for something greater, the audience feels empowered because they're presented for once as heroes in this story. So again, he continues with this ethos of humility. He does not position himself as the one who achieved all of this. Even though it's his victory and it's his night, he really makes the night about the audience, and that helps him establish the connection with the audience. Let's move on to the next part. New York, tonight you have delivered. A mandate for change. A mandate for a new kind of politics. A mandate for a city we can afford. And a mandate for a government that delivers exactly that. And then he says, you show that when politics speaks to you without condescension, we can usher in a new era of leadership. We will fight for you because we are you. So he has a series here at the beginning. Again, he speaks to the audience, he addresses them, he personifies the city that he speaks to, he addresses all of people who make up the city, who he is going to govern over as a mayor. Tonight you have delivered. And then he says what in a series of short, impactful sentences that also have this anaphora or repetition at the beginning. A mandate, a mandate, a mandate. These short sentences, because they are so short, they create a sense of urgency. They create a sense of determination. When he says these things, there is no room for doubt and there is no room for self-doubt. He's very confident as he speaks them and he's unwavering. They're not just ideas or hypotheses. This is concrete facts that he speaks. And this repetition makes it memorable and people will remember the things that he says. And then we can notice the way that he, in every political speech, this is something we can notice, and it's particularly important here. We're going to look at the way he uses pronouns. So he says, you have delivered. A city we can afford. You showed that when politics speaks to you, we can usher in a new idea, a new era of leadership. So when he uses you, he uses it in order to credit the audience and show them that, again, they are the main heroes of this story. And when he uses we, he includes himself in that group, and he uses that to create unity among everyone. The climax of this section of the speech is the sentence, we will fight for you because we are you. And here we have such great control of the pronouns that he uses. So he completely breaks the traditional barrier that exists between voters and politicians. And he doesn't say we are with you or we are there for you. He says we are you. And this builds profound trust. So the aim of this is building trust, again, positioning himself as an equal. Okay. In the next section, he says, thank you to those so often forgotten by the politics of our city, who made this movement their own. I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and American abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. So here we again see him thanking people, showing humility, and he speaks of people who were forgotten by the politics. And then as soon as he says that, he moves on to show that they were not forgotten by him. He acknowledges their existence and he acknowledges their sacrifice. He does this in very concrete terms. He's being very specific. He lists different nationalities and their occupations. And he also uses these foreign terms and these familiar terms like aunties. And this, again, breaks that barrier, makes it seem more informal, these are familial terms, so he's included in those groups. So the first effect, that the groups who were often ignored now feel acknowledged and recognized. Then he distinguishes himself from other politicians, and he shows that his movement is diverse and multicultural and oriented towards the working class. And also, finally, with these familial terms, he creates intimacy by using all of these affectionate terms and speaks in a kind of an insider language, which signals to the audience that he really belongs in these communities. The next section we'll go through has a very powerful metaphor, and he does it in a brilliant way. He says, "Now I know that I've asked much from you over this last year. Time and time again you have answered my calls. But I have one final request. New York City, breathe this moment in." So he starts with acknowledging that he has asked people for a lot, and he asks them in an imperative to breathe the moment in. So he gives them a kind of permission to celebrate. Now is the time to enjoy. We have held our breath for longer than we know. We have held it in anticipation of defeat. Held it because the air has been knocked out of our lungs too many times to count. Held it because we cannot afford to exhale. This sentence is really, really very powerful. It's a long sentence and has a lot of, again, repetition and parallelism. He speaks about holding breath, which is a metaphor, obviously. But the way he says it in a very long sentence also reflects the things that he speaks about. So again, as he is describing, we've held it and we've held it and we've held it, the way he speaks about it, the language mirrors the reality, mirrors the act that he's talking about. The rhythm itself is suffocating, and this physicality of the sentence and of the language he uses and of the rhythm that he imposes makes the audience feel the oppression that he is describing. So with every repetition, he builds upon this tension and increases the level of disappointment. And we can see again how he uses this physical language in much the same way that he used it when he talked about hands. There is a sense of accumulative suffering. There is this constant suffering, even more suffering, and then finally at the end, there is a release in a shorter sentence. Thanks to all those who sacrificed so much, we are breathing in the air of a city that has been reborn. So here there is the release at the end. So again, he could have said in this section, we have been let down so many times. But the way he said it here makes it all so much more powerful and make the audience feel it on so many levels. Then if we look at the very metaphor of the breath, not just the style of the sentence that he uses, when we think about holding our breath, we think about feeling anxious, feeling constant trauma, living in survival mode, putting our life on pause. And also, if you're holding your breath, you can't speak. There is no power for you. There is no platform at all. And that is what the people have been feeling for a very, very long time. And then when you are allowed to breathe in, you are finally able to thrive instead of survive, and you have some kind of hope for the future. Again, the metaphor works because it's so physical and it's so familiar, and everyone knows what it feels like. So the audience can, again, relate to it very well. So when we look at this section, and a lot of other sections that we've been talking about, we can really see how he controls the pace of his speech. He varies the sentence length, he varies the complexity. So he begins with these shorter sentences, New York, breathe this moment in, which creates gets the audience's attention and creates urgency. And then he builds up the tension with the long sentence here. And then he releases the tension with the sentence, we are breathing in the air, which is a strong sense of a release and triumph at the end. And there is also the metaphor of a city being reborn, which again, as he did in the beginning with mentioning Eugene Debs, he anchors his victory in something greater. So his victory is a matter of life and death. It is something enormous. It's something that is extremely important. Something that is monumental. And we'll go on to the very end of the speech, where he completes this cycle of really establishing the relationship with the audience, and he shows how really well it can be done by using the call and response technique. So he says a section of his slogan, and then the audience continues. And if you watch the original video, this is really, really powerful. So he says, together in New York, we're going to freeze and the audience responds, rent. We're going to make the buses fast and free. We're going to deliver universal childcare. Obviously, these are all slogans that the audience has memorized from earlier from his campaign. And he has embedded these slogans so much in their minds. And he is now saying a part of the sentence and they say a part of the sentence. They make it feel their own. They're actively involved. It shows the world who is watching that these people really actively support his mission and they feel the mission as their own. So there is a lot of energy, there is a lot of enthusiasm and excitement that he gets to create this way. And everybody feels unified. And so he is really able to establish that relationship with the audience by starting every sentence with together, and again using the pronoun we. He also moves the ownership of the slogans and of the mission to the people. So this includes everyone. And then at the end, he really cements this. He says, New York, this power, it's yours. The city belongs to you. So he moves from speaking about including himself in this we, he moves on to giving ownership and accountability to the people. So he moves from the collective ownership to individual ownership. And he emphasizes that this is a continued struggle, a continued effort. And again, he shows humility by giving credit to the people who chose him and empowers them to do the things that they set out to do in his campaign. But also when he gives this, he says, this power is yours and the city belongs to you. He creates a beautiful cyclical structure. If you remember from the very beginning, when he said the wealthy and the well-connected were told, the working class, that power does not belong in their hands. He now symbolically gives that power over to the people. So I hope that in this short analysis of just a few sections of the speech, you were able to understand how in political speeches and in many other types of speeches, a variety of techniques, both language techniques and structural techniques, can be used to create a relationship with the audience, to establish credibility, and to achieve a certain persuasive goal. If you like this, like and subscribe and share. Happy exam season, everyone.